What are we looking at there? Is that a garage door?
I think so.
Hope she didn't fall out getting out of the car.
Hey, Jack, you're live now.
Okay. All righty. I'm not sure. Did Sonny get back on or not, Trevor?
Her picture's here, but I'm not sure what happened to the view.
We're getting audio from her.
You're getting audio? Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and take the roll? We'll call the meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order. Please take the roll.
On the roll, Mr. Sharon,
Here.
Mr. Tuma,
Here.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens is absent at the moment. Ms. Baker,
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. We have a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Thank you. Is there been anybody from the public make a request for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one submitted any public comment.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes from the previous meeting? Not sure what I'm all hearing in the background, but Carol moved that we accept the minutes as presented. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second Ms. Baker.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approval of the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes have been approved. Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes have been approved. We have one item that has been presented to us that came over for our consideration. Could you please read it in the record?
Resolution number 2020-0156, adopting the 2020 Economic Recovery Plan in accordance with section 7.05 of the Cuyahoga County Charter and section 801.01 of the Cuyahoga County Code.
Okay. The chair will move to adopt. Is there a second? So we can have discussion?
Second.
Okay. Is there anyone here from the county to make a presentation in regards to this item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ted Carter, Chief Economic Development Officer for the county, joined by Paul Herdick, the Deputy Chief.
Okay. Well, let's begin so we can do our presentation portion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Sharon, members of the Economic Development Committee, on behalf of County Executive Armin Budish and the Economic Development Commission, I'm here today to present a summary of Cuyahoga County's plan for recovery, stabilization, and growth, an amended version of the 5-year plan. Our intent as we began 2020 was to develop a 5-year plan as we were starting a new decade that we could measure the progress of our objectives over a 5-year horizon with 1-year update. COVID-19 altered that plan. Given the extraordinarily unusual situation presented by COVID, and as directed by the ED Commission with my concurrence, we pivoted to develop a 1-year recovery plan for 2020. The 1-year plan was necessary given the acute nature of the crisis and uncertainty about the future.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, Mr. Carter.
Yes.
Can we ask everyone to please mute if they're not? There's a lot of background noise. Thank you.
The chair will even mute themselves. Thank
you. Yeah. Okay. Hence, we developed a plan that was consistent with the core themes of the approved 2019 plan and that underscored activities of the 2019 plan where we were making progress and gaining traction. The 1-year recovery plan now before this committee should be viewed as a framework for the work of the county's economic development ecosystem through mid-2021. The 4 strategies outlined in this 1-year recovery plan will be priorities over the next year. The Economic Development Commission will discuss at its next meeting what objective measures of success in 1 year should be assigned to each of these strategies, working with my department. As recommended by members of County Council, we will add a 1-year strategy to engage in planning activities to determine how the course of the pandemic and its economic impact requires adjusting the overall 5-year plan goals, strategies, and measures. We will also work to build on the work of the Cuyahoga County Citizens Advisory Council on Equity to ensure that the 5-year plan has a thorough and robust equity focus, as is reflected in the document you're considering. The Economic Development Commission and Department of Development will ensure that citizens and community leaders are engaged in updating the 5-year plan. My focus today is to outline the current economic environment, summarize critical activities and progress from the 2019 plan, and to summarize the 2020 plan. The current environment is clouded by economic uncertainty from a public health standpoint due to the unknown duration of the pandemic, resulting in private sector caution with respect to investment and hiring. This will not be a short-term V-shaped recovery, but by many projections, a prolonged 2-year recovery, despite current optimism and performance displayed by the equities market. To be clear, COVID-19 has and will continue to have a wide-ranging negative impact on our economy. The focus of this plan should not have us lose focus, nor forget the human impact and tragedy of COVID-19, but to help us develop an environment to help our residents better navigate the pandemic's impact long-term. The county economic development ecosystem on an emergency basis has responded admirably. Now we need to reorient our energies and position ourselves to address the following long-term challenges: workforce talent gaps, new market growth, smart risk-based investment to support developing new companies and technologies, positioning Cuyahoga County for supply chain opportunities given reshoring. And last but most importantly, all these challenges must be addressed in the context of racial and economic equity. Northeast Ohio was just beginning to recover from the 2008 recession in terms of employment and home values to its pre-recession levels of 2005 when COVID-19 hit. We remember all too well that the recovery from the 2008 recession was long, slow, and uneven versus our peers. The recovery differential in terms of employment between African Americans and white workers was stark. During the recession, a 20% unemployment variance existed at the peak of the 2008 recession, dropping to 12% in 2018. African American employment took twice as long to recover versus white employment, almost 6 additional years. Current national economic employment data projects that history will repeat itself here in Cuyahoga County, hence the core underlying focus on equity in this plan. Our recovery strategy must be equitable with an intentional, deliberate focus. This is our moment, in my opinion, to trample past inequities and leapfrog our peer communities. The economic landscape has changed for the foreseeable future. Key trends include restructuring of company supply chain due to potential reshoring and onshoring, as well as the tariff and pandemic environment. The increase in telemedicine of over 50% since 2015, increased reliance on technology for distance learning and remote work, and a market shift from brick and mortar retail sales to online sales from 1.5% of total retail sales in 2000 to more than 11% last year and growing. E-commerce is here to stay. With record unemployment, there will be a temptation to reflexively return to historical hiring procedures and practices as the economy improves. This could perpetuate racial disparity in lower to mid-skilled positions. We must proactively encourage companies to be aware of equity in their hiring practices while we provide support in the areas of upskilling and training. The good news is that there are activities pre-COVID-19 that were underway that should accelerate our recovery. In the talent space, the Workforce Initiative has continued its work, and now 3 sector intermediaries have been selected in the manufacturing, healthcare, and IT sectors. The Cleveland Innovation Project will complete its work in the fall to identify goals and objectives for its 4 strategies. Our one-year plan will complement and accentuate these activities that are already underway. We would like to emphasize that the focus on a one-year recovery plan is within the framework required by the county charter, which calls for annual updates for a 5-year plan. In this context, we are giving information on the 5-year plan status, as well as the specifics of a one-year recovery plan. Attached, and I think you've received it, is a summary matrix of activities approved in the 2019 plan with respect to their status. I'm happy to report that most of the activities reflect substantive progress that we will evaluate and prioritize as circumstances warrant in consultation with the ED Commission and our external partners. Progress made on the current 5-year plan. From 2019 through early 2020, when the pandemic developed, Cuyahoga County and other regional economic development actors worked on the goals and strategy in the current 5-year plan. The action status report shows progress on the goals and strategies of the current 2019 version of the 5-year economic development plan. Out of all the action items in the 5-year economic development plan, we had designated 8 priority action items. They are shown in bold italics on the chart, which either you have in your email.
I believe it's being shared now.
Okay, it's being shared. I'm not going to read, in the interest of time, this entire 5-page document, but I'm going to highlight a couple of the key strategies and activities. Activity 1.1 calls for the economic development system to support business growth and profitability through a workforce pipeline that delivers sufficient and steady supply of qualified candidates at all skill levels to keep jobs filled. Next, activity 1.3.1, so I talked about that briefly with respect to Workforce Connect.
Right.
Activity 1.3.1 commits us to form partnerships with public and private entities to ensure funding for startup and early stage businesses creating jobs in the future, such in the technology and healthcare sectors. We will strive to include minority entrepreneurs and organizations in these partnerships and funding streams. We expect that as the Cleveland Innovation Project concludes its work, the Department of Development will be asked to partner in its implementation. In its last year, the department has engaged with NASA Glenn Research Center, Jumpstart, and Jobs Ohio to begin thinking through the commercialization of technology strategy. This strategy has led to quarterly convenings separately of local small business support organizations to collaborate further and implement strategies. These meetings laid the foundation in 2020 for the creation of the Small Business Stabilization Center and Resource Fund that we implemented in the midst of COVID-19. Activity 1.4.7 notes that economic development system partners should increase the sources and amounts of public and private sector investment capital, including capital to make brownfield sites economically viable and leverage the Opportunity Zone tax incentive. Over the past 2 years, the Opportunity CLE collaboration with the Fund for Our Economic Future, Greater Cleveland Partnership, County Land Bank, and foundations has created a nationally recognized platform, particularly with respect to how we evaluate, measure, and implement social impact with respect to these projects. The platform links Opportunity Zone investors with eligible projects. Additionally, we note that Jobs Ohio has committed funds for site preparation to complement existing brownfields cleanup loan and assessment grant resources. We rate this activity in progress as we continue to explore the possibility of even greater resources for positioning development-ready sites to the market. Finally, activity 2.3.3 calls for a continued partnership with the Greater Cleveland Partnership, Team NEO, and Jobs Ohio to coordinate targeted strategic business scaling programs among these regional actors, municipalities, and the county's Skill Up Business Concierge Service to accelerate business growth in Cuyahoga County. Over the past year, the department has improved its integration with Ohio Means Jobs, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, and our Skill Up Business Engagement Program. This has led to over 500 businesses being engaged with continual referrals from each of these partners. This collaboration maximizes the benefit across referrals to meet all identified needs of each business, whether they are talent needs, financing needs, or simply more responsiveness from local government. And lastly, activity 2.4, Placemaking Investment. Pleased to acknowledge that we have continued investment in the Opportunity Corridor. So our brownfields monies have been used to help pre-position several sites in the Opportunity Corridor. And our East Cleveland Working Group is working with Team NEO and the Fund for Our Economic Future to develop to reposition East Cleveland. We've just concluded the implementation of a vision plan for that city that was conducted by CSU, and then there's been ongoing housing investments across the county to support placemaking. Cuyahoga County has engaged Cleveland State University separately for several years to report on key economic measures identified in the 5-year economic development plan. The attached PowerPoint presentation shows this information through the first quarter of 2020. And as we suggested last year, we offered a separate briefing on this document with CSU to this committee. We would like to extend that invitation again because I think that trying to compact that in this session really dilutes it. So I think we had a couple of council members last year that took us up on that offer, would extend that invitation again so we can go through slowly and deliberately those metrics with CSU and have a richer discussion. Lastly, county economic development lending in the last year. The pandemic impacted economic development activity, but several transactions were approved in the first half of 2020, notably the Sherwin-Williams headquarters and research facility expansion. Last year, nearly 900 jobs were created or retained through our lending, as well as over 1,100 construction jobs projected to be created, with $90 million of new capital expenditure projected. Through the second quarter of this year, 4,300 more jobs are projected to be created and retained, the bulk of this from Sherwin-Williams. Working with this committee and the county council, we approved 3 more traditional business expansion loans to manufacturers as well. Most recently, this committee and council approved a $3.5 million loan to GoJo, the makers of Purell hand sanitizers, for its new manufacturing operations in Maple Heights, with 200 high-paying new jobs projected. The average earnings of these jobs are well above the $46,000 county median household income. 2020 transactions leverage over $374 million of new capital expenditures. Fortunately, we have secured these projects as I believe they will anchor and define our recovery. Lastly, through the pandemic, the last several months, we've invested over $3 million through the county's small business stabilization fund that granted grants from $2,500 to $5,000 to 951 businesses, small businesses across the county. And the majority of those recipients were minority and women-owned businesses. We are now in the process of working with our partners to structure a survey to ascertain the impact of that funding, as well as do some other diagnostics and gain some analytic insights to better inform our small business policy making as we go forward. The OneYear Plan lays out a focused strategy for the county to play a lead role in improving constituents' lives economically, socially, and culturally. It recommends 6 primary goals, with each goal having a specific strategy and proposed outcome. Each of the goals will begin within the year or are already underway and will continue into the 5-year plan in terms of implementation. The primary goals of the OneYear Plan include a focus to reduce employment, reduce poverty, particularly in communities of color, drive innovation, entrepreneurship, and create the infrastructure to support technology commercialization across the ecosystem. And lastly, continue to promote and sustain system collaboration with a sense of urgency. The strategies to meet these goals are divided into 2 pathways to restore Cuyahoga County and build up Cuyahoga County for the long term. Achieving these goals rests on 4 strategies: continued investment in support of small and minority businesses and residents, investing in and expanding innovation, accelerating and scaling existing workforce initiatives, and marketing the county locally and nationally. The objectives listed within the OneYear Plan is intended to set the foundation for substantial recovery, revitalization, and growth of the county economy through the support of its businesses and our residents. These strategies have the potential to address historic disparities and elevate the county's place within the national economy through collaboration and strategic investments during this reset period. In closing, I'd like to recognize the work of the Economic Development Commission for their input and guidance as we structured this plan, and the tactical work of my team, Paul Herdick and Regina Johnson. My team and I look forward to working with the County Council, ED Commission, the County Executive, and our county partners to address these challenges to move Cleveland forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We had Ms. Simon was, I know, in transition. I don't know if she was able to get back on. Sunny?
I'm here.
Okay, good.
Thanks,
Okay,
Jack.
let the record reflect this on this. Ms. Simon's on there. Ms. Stevens, was she able to get linked in? Okay, not hearing that. We'll please let the record reflect that Sonny, Ms. Simon is in, has been on the meeting since the beginning. Mr. Chair, Mr. Carter, in regards to this, this is obviously a change in direction and I'm sure the biggest reflection is that COVID has changed the whole world out there. I know that the sector partnership program, again, is experiencing a back off of some of their goals and objectives simply because they had some aggressive goals in investing in the community and innovation and hiring within the minority community and replacement of unemployment. But unfortunately, most of those members of the sector partnerships have been forced to be doing furloughs and laying off at a time when they would have loved to have been able to been aggressive in their minority hirings. Are you seeing any of that reflected in your feedback on this, Mr. Carter, as far as the other sectors? I've only been familiar with the manufacturing sector. Can you tell us anything about what's going on in those the other two sectors also that the county was launching?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chairman, thanks for the question. I think that warrants really, and I think we owe you probably when we reconvene in the fall, a update on the work of the entire sector intermediaries. But I'd say that healthcare has been impacted by COVID in terms of hiring. So they just have now hired a executive director to lead that effort. And so although that was awarded in the fall, COVID kind of interrupted the velocity there. But even though we were in the middle of COVID, the Workforce Funders Group has made a decision in terms of the intermediary and for the IT sector. And so they are underway. But there's no doubt about it that COVID is going to slow everything down and has slowed everything down. But having said that, we still need to muster as much energy as we can to implement some of these things through remote and just be more innovative in how we execute. So the desire is certainly there, but the practical reality of getting things moved is real.
I know that before we get to questions from my colleagues, one of the big changes has been a focus on the short term, the 1 year, the triage of the economic patient here in the county. Give us I know you went through the narrative in your prepared remarks, but why do you think that this is the year in which you do the 1 year triage as far as what we're looking at?
Yeah, well, as we've discussed in previous years, although our focus has always been 1 year in terms of, I guess, how this has been structured through the charter, but now it became particularly important because we just don't know what's over the horizon over a 5-year period. So really, my view and the view of the commission members, which your one was, let's focus and get through the next 6 months for sure, next year hopefully, and then when we do the 2021 plan, we can lay out a 4-year horizon with annual benchmarks. But there was so much uncertainty when we were drafting this. We were still closing out the stabilization fund, and no one can predict the future and what's going to happen here in terms of this pandemic and the economic impact. So we think that what we provided and set forth and the commission has endorsed are the key elements of advancing our work to create a sound economic recovery, and they build on existing initiatives. And just 5 years is too long a horizon to kind of navigate in terms of work or forecast.
Can you tell the committee why you think that what is being recommended is in compliance with the county charter in regards to the economic development plan?
Yeah, the charter, while it does mandate a 5-year plan, it does allow for 1-year updates. So we think that this adheres to the spirit of those 1-year updates, those annual updates. And so, and because of the extenuating circumstances, that this was a prudent, and I think that we have structured with some of the feedback that we've gotten where we meet both the spirit and the intent of the charter mandate.
And I know that having relationships with other business people here in the area. They're actually measuring their anticipation within even shorter periods of time than 1 year and even 6 months. Some are looking out at just 90-day windows for their reaction and their plans out there. So yes, was that the county? Yes, the county attorney.
This is
Please,
Greg.
Mr.
I respectfully, I don't quite understand the rationale that the charter contemplates a 1-year plan. I don't actually see that language anywhere in section 7.05 of the charter. So I'm kind of struggling with how that, the rationale, frankly, that Director Carter presented. I just don't, I understand the reason for doing a recovery plan right now with the disaster we're dealing with, but I don't see how it satisfies the requirement in the charter for a 5-year plan.
Mr. Carter, do you want to address that, or would you like the chair to at least talk to you?
I think but we'll get to what it was.
I'm not sure I understand Director whose question.
So I came out here.
Maybe you can restate it again, please, for his perspective.
Well, sure, Mr. Chairman, and the charter clearly says shall prepare and present to the council by the first day of June of each year a proposed 5-year economic development plan. And from what I see, this is a 1-year plan dealing with the present problem that we have. But I don't know, is there another plan, a 5-year plan coming down the road, or how is this going to be, how is the charter requirement going to be dealt with?
I believe what you're seeing on that, Mr. Huth, is you're seeing the 5-year plan was last year's plan that has not been updated. So you still have the 5 years of that plan with 1 year's activity.
So is that council's intent then, is to take last year's plan and tack this onto it and make it the 5-year plan for 2020?
Yeah, I don't think that the plan from last year that was adopted does not necessarily go away just because you're taking 1 year's worth of action.
Yeah, and I think traditionally what we've had here is a rolling 5-year plan. So it's not been, 5-year commencement, 5-year ending points. And so again, I think given the extenuating circumstances, this is a transition plan that will create the foundation for a 1-year plan starting in 2021. And as I said during my remarks, a lot of the work that's presented in this plan reflects the foundation of the 2019 adopted plan. But it's as a legal question, I would defer to Mr. Huth to give us some guidance on how we square this.
Mr. Huth?
Well, I've only been thinking about it for a couple of days now, and I haven't figured it out yet. I'm trying to, but if the intent is to take the last 4 years of the last year plan and incorporate this year into that, that could be your 5-year plan, I suppose.
Yeah, let's be realistic. It would be a complete waste of everybody's time to do a 5-year plan at this moment in time, not knowing whether we're going to go into a depression or some significant economic downturn that could not even be forecasted. Major corporations are only doing 1-year plans at this point in time, even though their boards have laid out desires to go longer than that because of the uncertainties. So you tell us what you'd like us to do.
Yeah, I guess since Director Huth and I haven't had an extensive opportunity to talk about this, I would say, from my layman's perspective, and as a practical matter, that the 1-year plan is consistent with the spirit of the 5-year planning process. So I'm not sure what the specific charter requirements would have to be in place in order to meet that intent, Director Huth.
Mr. Chairman.
Does a 5-year plan, Mr. Huth, in your opinion, if it simply states that that 5-year planning cannot be laid out with any certainty whatsoever, you've addressed the 5 years by making that statement there, and you're going to focus on the 1-year activities?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
If you were to say that the 5 years is not something that can be done with certainty, other than to say that that is impossible to do planning for what's going to take place 5 years from now based on the current economic activities, does that constitute a plan? That you merely have thought about it, you've addressed it, and it cannot be solved.
Well, I think that's probably the case in a lot of situations.
It is the case. I mean, it does not make sense just to be chasing your tail, to be doing something just to say something, because knowing full well that no one anticipated in March 15th, when this hit the United States, that we were going to go through any of this. And so it's what's taken place in these last 4 months economically in the world has changed everybody dramatically. So
Agreed. But
mean,
I think the intent
you
of the
tell us
charter
what
is to incorporate this 1-year recovery into the 5-year plan.
Yeah, but and again, all we're saying is that last year's year 4 and 5 were legitimate attempts to believe that those things could take place.
Mhm.
As we sit here today, is it legitimate to think that what was thought about even 6 months ago is a legitimate alternative to take place? And how much time do you want to spend time versus going out there and trying to find new businesses to come in, as Mr. Carter is doing? I guess that's really what it comes down to. And we need your legal opinion as to what length and depth do you need to spend on chasing something 4 years or 5 years from now that is very, very difficult for anybody else to forecast.
Yeah, I'd also, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, offer this insight as well, and we kind of dance around this every year when we go through this process, is that, and Director Huth used to be in this department, so maybe he'll have some empathy or sympathy here, that this plan is not in its entirety directed at the Department of Development. It's a plan that sets a framework for the ecosystem. So for all of our external partners, many of whom serve on that commission, also come from the vantage point that you do, Mr. Strawn, that, you know, the use of time and our ability to effectively forecast how the development strategies over a 5-year horizon just was not sensible. So let's focus on 1 year based on what we know, 6 months barely, but, you know, certainly these, all things being equal, and as the environment stays the way it is, relatively speaking, these things will take us through the 1 year and should set us in excellent position to roll into a 4-year strategy. So, Director Huth, I don't know if that is helpful to, I know part of this is a technical issue around how the charter mandates that this happen. But did not, I know Mr. Miller had a point of view that I don't know how to reconcile kind of practical realities with the governance mandate.
Yeah, that's always the challenge.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, we'll recognize Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, I think the charter language is very clear that they're asking for a 5-year plan and that what I suggested is that that we take the 1-year plan and then we say that on a provisional basis that the plan from the 2019 plan be incorporated provisionally as year 2 through 5. That plan suggested a wide range of activities such as placemaking, working on disparities and a lot of things that aren't going to go away because of the economy is better or worse following COVID-19. A lot of these things we're going to do regardless, and I think that a 5-year plan has to be a 5-year plan, and I just don't think that that having a situation like this eliminates the need for planning. If anything, it creates a greater need for planning because there's such a wider range of possible outcomes and there's greater opportunities. There may be things we can do, for example, on disparity as people rejoin the workforce that we might not be able to do when the workforce is much more stable. So I just think I think we need a 5-year plan, and we shouldn't say that we can't plan in this environment.
Mr. Chairman?
Gail, the problem,
Mr. Chairman?
as I see it, is that we could be losing up to 5,000 of our 5,000 restaurants. We could be losing half of those. We could be losing probably 20 to 30% of our hotels out of this. We could be losing major portions. And I'm sorry, but I don't understand how you do a 5-year plan when we're going backwards economically in this county, not because of anything we did, but because we're going to be seeing these repercussions out there. I think we also have, I'd like to recognize the county executive would like to say something also on this topic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in 100% agreement with what you've said. I mean, I don't know how you plan for 5 years realistically. I mean, the commission could come up with something, make something up, but as you said, you don't know, we don't know, if there's going to be any airlines, flying in and out of Cleveland. We don't know, about the restaurants, convention business, all the things that are critical to the county. And I would ask Mr. Huth to take a look at the last sentence of that portion of the charter, which talks about there being an annual update, which is adopted. If you have a new 5-year plan every year, why would you need an annual update? So I would suggest that it's not crystal clear and that the charter doesn't prohibit doing a 1-year plan. Of course, I'm not the county law director, you are, but that's what I would ask you to take a look at.
And that's my basis also for my comments that we do have a 5-year plan. It doesn't require you to change the 5-year plan every year. I don't believe.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, who is that, Sunny?
Yes.
Yes, Miss Simon, please.
Thank you so much. This half-hour discussion about the language in the charter just makes it clear to me that it's not clear. And I think we need to maybe adjust this charter language. It doesn't make sense every year to do 5 years. I agree. It's just, I think we need to look at the charter language, but we also need to be flexible and be able to adapt to what's happening. This is just a supplement to the 5-year plan as I see it. Things have changed drastically, but we probably do need to adjust the language.
Yeah, I actually, at the very beginning, I had suggested that most businesses are only going out 2 and 3 years, even before this pandemic, because it's the dynamics and technology and everything is changing so fast that I think that a 2 to 3 years is what it would require in normal practices right now. And even our county budget is only 2 years long that we can forecast for. So I agree with you, Ms. Simon, that but I don't know that we can fix it right now.
No.
Yeah, if I may.
Sort of a charter amendment.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Chairman, I think
Yes,
that's
Mr. Huth?
an excellent point. I've never really understood why the charter calls for a 5-year plan every 5 years. What's that? What it does? But that's what the first 2 or 3 sentences of the section does say. And in response to the executive's comment about that last sentence, that reference to the plan in that last sentence is the 5-year plan that's being reviewed every year. So I think the charter section itself is clearly confusing, because that makes any sense. Needs to be revised, but I think we have to figure out how to deal with what we're working with today, the language we have today. And I think the suggestion that Councilman Miller made makes some sense.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Carter.
Two things. Let me try to thread the needle here. I know I didn't go to law school, but Mr. Miller, we do acknowledge the intent of what we need to present given current charter language on page 4 of the recovery plan, last sentence, along with the immediate focuses, other initiatives will be worked on and continued into the 5-year plan. So I think, again, there's some foundational elements here. Workforce is clearly not a one-year effort. The focus on racial and economic disparity isn't a one-year effort. Innovation is going to be a multi-year effort. So I think implicit and implied in this plan are things that are going to be long-term, that there's consensus in the community, certainly among the commission, that these are key strategies that will not only impact the coming year, but beyond. And we will work with you and Director Huth between now and Thursday at 3, whenever Ms. Schmalzer says we need to formally transmit this, to square the language so it kind of meets both objectives here, if that makes sense to the both of you.
Well, I understand that the desire to live within the four corners of a document that sometimes becomes difficult when you say things 5-year plans, when they wrote that language, what, 12 years ago, never anticipating that we would hit a pandemic of this nature worldwide that would shut the economies down. So,
I agree with you, Mr. Chair. I would say my personal opinion, and I think I've said this in previous testimonies and hearings, that the language should be cleaned up, because there should be 5-year increments, not a rolling basis. You know, there's not enough time year to year to advance some of these initiatives. They take time, even if there weren't a pandemic. And so I think clarifying that, regardless of maybe using this moment to clarify that, would be helpful. And then we measure these things over a 5-year horizon, which was our plan here, to present a 5-year hard 2020 to 2025 plan, where you could, unemployment will move, but it's not going to move at the level over a 1-year period, because these things take time to gestate, build on one another. And the market's business cycles, as you know, are over that period of time. So,
well, I'm not sure that presenting a charter amendment to change that language is probably the best thing to be putting it on the ballot. But it is, if there's ever going to be a time when people can understand that the business cycles at this moment in time and the government cycles are going to be much shorter than they were thought about before, this would be a time when we could actually could get support for something of that nature. But to move charter amendments, I think would be a real challenge and not necessarily good use of our time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Carter,
yeah.
just
Mr. Toomey will be next. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Nan. Yeah, and then Mr. Toomey, I think I heard his voice next.
all right. Just maybe another look at this and how we're analyzing. Have you given some thought to comparing this to the 2008 recession and how that recession was a slow recession? I mean, we saw it coming, it came, it took a long time to come back. And finally, we saw a great economy earlier this year and last quarter of last year. And then suddenly we have a pandemic that completely took us all in a downturn. Do you think that, comparing the two, I would think that because the unemployment rate was so low, historically low, even in Cuyahoga County, and the interest rates were low, and housing was good, all those things were different than the last recession we had. Last recession was a slow downturn that finally took us to a place where it took a long time to recover. Any thought that because we're dealing with one element, one circumstance that brought this economy down was this virus? And if we were able to overcome that virus with either antidotes or vaccines or antibodies or anything else that they're talking about out there, that we saw that success coming in the first quarter next year or even into mid 2021, that this would not be the same kind of recovery that we saw in 2008, where it took a slow growth because we had such a poor foundation before that. that the strong foundation that was there in 2020 of February was just a different animal than what it is that we're dealing with now. And because it is a historic challenge, that perhaps it'll be just as historic that we see a better economy sooner than perhaps we're anticipating. In your circles of talking with others and maybe taking a step back and looking at it differently, do you see any credibility to this pandemic being overcome and that the economy coming back better than what we saw in 2008?
If you're asking me,
How's that for a question?
I'll give you my personal opinion on that, Nan.
Was that a question? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
How's that for a question?
I'll give you my personal
Crystal
opinion
ball.
that, yeah, I thought at one point that you might be correct in your analysis, but at this point in time, the longer this goes, the more likely we're going to lose businesses that are not going to come back.
I
Our
agree.
restaurant and hospitality businesses, they're not the same. When you go through a slowdown, you can start to lay off people and slow down the people coming in, but these are not even opening. And for all intents and purposes, I mean, I don't want to see a show of hands on the call, but I'll bet some people have not even been into a restaurant in the last 6 months. I bet they've not done participation. And so unlike the slow recovery you're talking about, people went in, they were not afraid to go in those restaurants. They might not have had the capital or the money, but at least they went in once a quarter or once a month or something like that. Today, they're not going in at all. And so I
But
think
that
that's
is fed on fear. That's fed on fear. And of course, we're going to be losing many of our businesses, many of our restaurants. But when the economy is better and people are not in fear and they're free to go back out without having to worry about who they're going to talk to or how close they're going to get to someone, then that void of where one restaurant closed, the market will drive new businesses to open only if there's a need and people feel that they can go back out again. That's the difference, I think, in this economy that was different than past recessions, is that there will be a void. It's all about fear. And if we overcome the fear, then people will instantly start going out. Businesses will instantly start thinking about opening up businesses and hiring and taking those risks that they are not willing to take right now. And I guess I'm just asking, Director Carter, if that has at all been in any of the conversations that he has had with anyone, that this could be a surprising recovery if we get past the fear by having a vaccine or any type of antibody or anything that gives anyone the reason not to be fearful anymore to step out their door. And that's really what's driving this economy. It's the fear.
Yeah, no question.
Able to overcome recessions. That's my question.
Councilwoman, I'm not qualified to answer many components of your question, particularly from a public health standpoint. But I will tell you that this is materially different and I think broader than the last recession because of the breadth of the sectors it's impacted and will impact. What I hear in the business community, what I read is deep caution, and as I said in my prepared remarks, a long-term recovery. The unknown and the wild card is the vaccine. So who can predict when that will be developed and then socialized at a level where to confront the fear that you've talked about. So don't know. My personal opinion is that we've got a long road ahead of us, and that we'll hope for the best. And but I hear very few people that are optimistic that this will recover in the early part of next year.
And you summarized, Nan, why a one-year plan, as far as at this point in time, is about as far as you can forecast, because the guess is on when a vaccine will be available. 3 months or 3 years is the ranges that you're hearing. So it's very, very tough, I think, to put Mr. Carter on a tough path that says you got to do X, Y, and Z, not knowing when this is going to take place.
And I'm sure in a year from now, next July, we all sit here and reflect back. Hopefully we're in a better place. that we will be working on another one-year economic plan that will be brighter, that will be forward, that will be talking about how are we going to get our people trained to fill the jobs that are now starting to open and continue. I mean,
I certainly hope that'll be the case, and actually I hope it's the
too.
case sooner than that.
I
Mr.
do.
Duma, I think you were next up.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, I can certainly appreciate the substance of this discussion, but procedurally speaking, we have requirement under the charter. And what I fear is that county council here is going to try to help out the administration here again and try to work with them. And then we're the ones who are going to take a hit from everybody saying, well, they didn't follow the charter again. I mean, we've been through this with the CARES Act monies, with the storage facility. I saw a wonderful article ripping apart the Public Works Committee, how, you know, no bid contracts went through and because of time elements. Well, here we go again. I mean, we have a charter that states 5 years. And if Mr. Carter wants to put something together and, you know, even if it's a rehash of some of the stuff previously, at least he's following the, you know, black letter of the law, so to speak. I mean, our law director's advising one thing. Mr. Miller has, you know, suggestions out there. I just think that if we need to change it, we need to change it. And I don't think anybody here is arguing that, but I don't read anywhere in the charter that if there's a world pandemic, we're allowed to, you know, skip the rules, you know? So I just think that's something that we have to address.
Well, I guess that's what makes horse races out there, as far as whether or not this makes sense. And I'm sorry that that sometimes there are some exceptions to actions, and I just don't know that we accomplish a whole heck of a lot to tell you what's going to happen in 5 years from now, when you can't tell me when none of us can tell what's going to happen in 5 weeks or 5 months from now, and not even with any reasonable certainty. I mean, I think it's still within the spirit to say that, as Mr. Miller points out, the main goals are not going to change. The main objectives of trying to be innovative and have tried to increase minority hirings, and all those things are still in the 5-year plan. And those things are still have been adopted by reference into the 1-year activities. But to sit there and to try to plan for what could take place in year 2, 3, 4, and 5 is going to be, I think, impossible. But to reference those as still being aspirational, I think is okay. And that still keeps you within the 5-year goals and objectives to be aspirational. But to do much more than that in this period of time, I think is going to be a lot of effort for, I'm not sure what the value.
And again, Mr. Schron, I think you're speaking to the substance, not the procedure here. And if I hear the law director say it's okay to go forward with a 1-year plan, then I'm okay with that. Mr. Law Director?
And Mr. Chairman, that's actually my biggest concern, is the way this resolution is worded. I think we have to figure out how to rewrite the resolution so that it's clear that we're talking about a 5-year plan and that this is one component of it. But right now, this simply refers to a 1-year plan, and I don't think that's ever been done before. So because it's not consistent with the charter. So if there's, maybe the Director Carter and I should sit down and put our heads together and figure out how to reword the resolution. And if this means readopting the 2019 plan with this as a component of it, that could be a workable solution.
I agree. Thank you.
What if it says not necessarily a component of, but the focus of where we're going right now? And you still you still reiterate your 5 years, Mr. Law Director.
I guess that sounds like a distinction without a difference to me, but we could do that however you like.
Well, a component of it means that's a subset. Focus means that's where my activity is going to be. And I'm basically going to disregard years 3, 4, 5, and 6, or 3, 4 years 2, 3, 4, and 5, even though they're on paper there. Because as a component, it says that might be some part of years 2, 3, 4, and 5. We might find out as we go along in year 1 with our focus that we do have to change 2, 3, 4, and 5 because the world has changed. We have lost a portion of our business.
But that is the reason they come back every year. And that's the reason the plan's reviewed every year.
Okay, so please give some suggestions as to what year 5 would look like based on today's activity. And I don't know. We had smart people trying to look at that.
I don't know either. That's not my job, but.
No, I got that.
You could project that from the previous 5-year plans.
No, you cannot. Not when the bottom dropped out this year, you cannot project year 5 based on last year's forecast, based on where we are right today. I don't believe. You tell me another major corporation that's doing that right today based on the last 4 months, and I would be thrilled to know that because I can't find them.
So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll take the offer that Director Huth has made, and we'll sit with him tomorrow, and we will try to integrate both the 5-year horizon with the focus on the document we have here, which again has been approved by the ED Commission. So they probably did not have visibility. I know they didn't, to kind of the arcane dynamics around the charter mandate and how that actually reflected this planning document, which they approved. So I will sit with Director Huth. We will get and work with council staff to figure out both the resolution and content here, which will be acceptable. And I think, again, we haven't revised a lot or eliminated a lot of the content of the 2019 plan. Some of the things just have not advanced, so we've deleted those and get a document. I'm not sure how that will be considered from a process standpoint, but get it to you and to council staff to figure out how we advance this. So I think I heard Director Huth say the resolution needs to be amended, and then we have to make some content adjustments. With Councilman Miller has already offered some suggestions, and I feel strongly we should keep the spirit and the core focus of the 1-year plan which has been presented. So I'd love to hear if the committee has any objections to what's been presented from a content standpoint, and we could at least get an endorsement that directionally is headed the right way. I think we can square the timelines, timing, and reconcile the 2019 plan with 2020.
Okay, there are comments and questions in regards to not the procedural aspects of the 5-year aspect, but the 1-year current focus. Are there comments in regards to that from anybody?
Yes, I have a comment.
Sure.
A couple of things. I agree with the focus, but I would add what you suggested in your presentation, which is that you should make some reference to that during the next year we're gonna think about what the changes to the longer range plan has to be, and that we're gonna incorporate the information from the disparity advisory, or the equity advisory commission and the disparity study, and work on that aspect as well. And the second suggestion that I would make, and it applies to this, but it applies to any of them. And I've said this before. I think that that an economic development plan should have context, and when you open your plan, you should start by saying, this is what we've accomplished in the last year on the plan, and this is where we stand now, and based on that, this is what our plan is. And I think you did a good job of presenting some of that to the committee, but I think at least in summary form that you should have some of that material in the plan itself, so that people who are reading the plan know where we've been and where you think we're heading. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, on that point, Dale, when you reference context, I believe it does reference context. It doesn't reference it in regards to what happened a year ago. It references the context that where we are right now, we're in a snapshot of the middle of the coronavirus. And that's the context to which I believe the 1 year has been written, that it's very, very difficult to go forward without recognizing the context of what's taken place since March. And that's the context. I think it doesn't go through a summary of past activities, it's telling you right now that the patient, the economic patient within the world and the country and our community is a challenged patient right now economically.
Well, I'm sure that is, but Mr. Chairman, I think that any of these plans should start with some review of what have we accomplished or what have we found not difficult to accomplish in the recent past to kind of set the stage for the discussion.
Okay, well, I guess the state, part of the discussion is that we are where we are right this moment with businesses folding in our retail almost in shambles, sadly, out there. Because people are not going to restaurants and people are not using our retail businesses right now.
Totally agreed that that's also an important part of the context.
Thank you. You are one of our procedural watchdogs, Mr. Miller, even though you're not on the committee. Would you see any problem with approving this as it is with the proviso that it must be amended because we only have one more meeting that's going to take place. And before that meeting, the amendment would be done on the floor. If it's not satisfactory, the amendment would not be approved, obviously, by the full council.
Mr. Chairman, we've used that process on numerous occasions before, and that would be fine.
Anybody else disagreeing with that? Mr. Tuma, I think your comments were one that would align with Mr. Miller. Would that be acceptable to you to pass it, to get it out of committee, to get it to the floor for our next full meeting? And if the amendment was not satisfactory, then it doesn't get voted out of the full council?
Yeah, no, I'm good with that.
Okay, all right. Any other comments from anyone else in regards to that process? Hearing none, the chair will move then to move this for second reading suspension with the proviso that an amendment would be presented on the floor to amend what we've already had in place that would be satisfactory to our law director working in concert with our economic development director. Is there a second?
Second, Simon.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Any other discussions in regards to moving it through a second reading suspension with that proviso? Hearing no other conversation, all in favor, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Sorry.
Oh, hey, Ms. Stevens, thank you. Sorry, I didn't recognize you. I called your name out earlier. Were you there when I called your name out? Okay, I cannot hear you. You're not, your voice is.
I was muted. I keep muting myself right away.
Okay, well, let the record reflect that Ms. Stevens was with us the entire time then. Sorry about that when I called your name out. The reason why I bring that up is because I got in trouble one time with a plain dealer with somebody not recognizing me at a meeting. So we'll make sure. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the move moves to the full council with a proviso that we'll see an amended document before that time. Is there any other matters to come before this committee? Hearing none, the chair will adjourn it. Thank you very much, Dale. We do appreciate your comments. Mr. Huth, good luck on drafting it to your own satisfaction. Thank you.
All right, thank
Have a
you.
good evening, everyone.
Thank you.